A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Our next guest has grown up with Tourette's syndrome and other neurodiverse conditions. In the late 1970s, after a very poor educational experience, he was sent to a workshop for the disabled, where he was taught to do very menial tasks. His parents had been told by professionals that he was disabled, but Dave Brebner had several great mentors that he says God put into his life. He learned the electrical trades and became a teacher for 17 years. Now he has 2 master's degrees and is currently doing a PhD in educational neuroscience. And he tells his story in a new book called Living Beyond Limits: My Struggle and Triumph Over Tourette's Syndrome. A very special welcome along to 2020 to David Brebner. Hi, David.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, Neil.
David, when we hear of those beginnings, the hardships of someone being called disabled, a testimony that you have that God had other plans. How do you reflect on that?
Oh, God has plans for everybody, and I often joke when I'm talking to audiences, Neil, that it's life to the full, but it's also life to the F-O-O-L, is also as much as F-U-L-L. And the world considers people fools sometimes, and the world considers people not up to scratch. And I think God likes to sometimes take those people and show what he can do with them. So I'm very fortunate that he's done that with me, and it's a great testimony to transformation, what he can do.
At only 7 years old, your carefree world was shattered, and unbearable pain, perplexing, uncontrollable movements. Take us back to when you really were hit by Tourette's.
Well, of course, we didn't know what it was, and in the 70s it wasn't a trendy thing, even though it had been discovered 150 years earlier. It wasn't well known, and nobody knew what I had. At first, they took me to the family doctor because I was shaking my head and twitching and clearing my throat excessively, and they thought, and the lovely old family doctor, Dr. Ward, said, it's probably just attention. He's had a bit of, Mum had broken a leg earlier, and we'd had a bit of trauma in the family, and they said it was just attention seeking, and pardon me, Dave will get over it, and David will be a good kid and he'll get over it. And I didn't basically get over it. It went strangely worse and worse and worse, combined with obsessive thoughts and rituals, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, which is concentrated in the cousins of Tourette's. And my world ended up just a system of rituals, fear, great anxiety disorders, and twitching and saying things out of order, saying things that were really not socially acceptable, or I'd just come out with something instantly. And some of them were quite hilarious, but some of them were quite scary, actually. So it was. I didn't know what was going on, and nobody did. And they thought it was just all attention seeking, as a lot of people think those sort of things are.
And you've got to have, I guess, some level of sense of humour about some of those sorts of things, because if you can look back and laugh, that's a useful thing. I think you have a few great stories to tell too. I think you were an altar boy, and you remember being put in charge of the candles in church. What happened there?
Yeah. Oh, well, they had these lovely wax candles, and they smelled really good. And I had this thing about playing with fire at the time, and at one stage we knocked one of the candles off the altar and set fire to the altar cloth in the middle of mass. So that's that was going in a resume, really. But it was quickly put out, and things continued, and sort of decorum was restored. But it was quite funny, things like that. And I was once in a choir, and we were singing up the back in the altar, in the choir loft, sorry. And the bishop was down the front doing all the bells and smells, and us Catholics too, the bells and smells, as they call them. Yep. And the choir lady says to us, a very good friend of our family, says to us, now whatever you do, don't make a sound. Now, I always joke with audiences, whatever you do, don't think of a pink elephant. It's like a red rag to a bull for a Tourette's person. You've got to make a sound. So I started squeaking and carrying on, and I just don't know what was going on. And everyone was looking at me. I was looking at them, and we're still going, this is a bit weird. But I was about 8 or not, probably actually about 10, I think. And so if you tell, it's like I think the great Ignatius Loyola said, you can't stop birds flying over your head, but you can stop them making a nest in your hair. And for us people with Tourette's and OCD, these thoughts make a nest in our hair. And if you tell me not to do something, the brain doesn't understand a negative concept, see. So you plant a thought in my head. It's all on.
I'll try not to draw your attention to do anything embarrassing on the radio here, but interesting that, in church, in some sense, it's not a performance. You're there and you're serving, and what's happening because you're connected with church life is that your view of the world is being shaped in a particular way. And when you're going through these things and you're experiencing all sorts of behaviours that you are seeing as uncontrollable, and at the same time having your view of the world shaped by what you're participating in, how do you describe the way church has been such a significant thing in your life?
Well, I grew up Catholic, and we're a very good Catholic family and very, very dedicated. Not overly conservative, but my mum was a convert to Catholicism, so we were always told to ask questions and to question things, and went with our conscience. I guess like many teenagers, later on in teenage time, I didn't think much of it. I thought it's boring and blah blah blah. But my brother took me to a Franciscan monastery one night, or Franciscan monks, Orders of St. Francis, and there was a youth group there that were praying, and they were praying. It was a charismatic youth group, and they were praying very fervently. And I just came home. Something just a big. I don't know what it was, but I think that night my faith sort of got its turbocharge, and it became a real thing to me rather than just a religious experience. And I think somebody said to me at one stage, we're a product of our future, not a product of our past when we're Christians. And it was very strong, hit me. And my favourite scripture has always been, since that time, so this is the late 70s, John 17:4, that I thank you, Father, I've completed the work you gave me to do. And I think that's my prayer, that for my family and for myself, that I started saying to God, what do you want me to do? I realised there's a reason for me being here. And I think that was my conversion experience.
And when you make sense of the fact of what so many are saying is disability, and then really knowing that there's something that God has for you on the face of this earth. He's got a purpose for you. He's got a plan for you. Yes. How does that work out? Because I know when you were at school, having Tourette's made you what you describe as a magnet for mockery. So you're trying to make sense of the world, hearing in some sense from God, and at the same time you're the brunt of everyone's jokes.
Well, like that time at the Franciscan Friary, the monastery, actually happened when I fell out of school, but even when I went to the same workshop, I was the butt of jokes. I think, it's a hard one. I think, Neil, because you there's suffering in the world, and we my parents watched me suffer. I went through psychiatric wards. I went through all sorts of things, and even then I was picked on. And I think that I think that God wants to have a story, like the scripture says, beauty for ashes. And I think you've got to have the ashes first. And before resurrection, there's always a death. No one likes that part. No one likes that part, eh? Look, I think I remember praying to God quite often, even though I didn't really know who he was. I was praying to him, saying, God, can you help me? Can you help me? And saying, Our Father, and things like this quite often, and crying out and saying, where are you, God, and who are you, and what are you? And I think what he finally answered my question, and I think, but I think I needed the story, because I think we've got to have, I think you got to have the before and then the after. And I think if I hadn't gone through all those experiences, I wouldn't have had the testimony now that I have. So, I'm grateful for that.
In your family environment, and I mentioned in the introduction, you had some mentors that had taken you under their wing. And I know your father called you a grasshopper because of your ability to jump from one thing to another like a bug looking for a greener leaf to chew on. To get life sorted, a career, and you've got an academic bent to your own nature now. Harnessing all of those things to actually get you focused. How did they do that? What were they saying as encouragement?
Well, I think, look, the bottom line is I think, Neil, somebody taught me to learn how I learn. And I'm one of the quarter or third of the population that don't learn in the classic education system, the mass production system we had for education. It's not a criticism because you can't look after everybody, but we have a mass production system to feed the economic machine, and we're taught in syllabus, we're taught one way or sort of thing. And I went to in the disabled workshop, I went to the metal work department. Funny enough, I got kicked out of the electrical department because I was no good at it. And then I've been an electrical teacher for 17 years, so the irony is there. But this man, Ian, took me under his wing. He's an old aircraft engineer. He actually made some robots out of the 2001 Space Odyssey movie, and he showed me I wanted to build a robot. And this is the days before there was much OH&S. So he just basically gave me welding torches and lathes and everything to go to it. And he was, I remember one particular time he was welding up a set of shells for somebody, and he gave me the torch like Obi-Wan Kenobi, handing out the torch to a young Skywalker and saying, "You finish this, I got to go and do something." I had no qualifications, whatever, but I did a really good job of it. And it was like, it just woken me up. He taught me the way I like to learn. And I think the big secret here is if we can teach young neurodiverse people to learn how they learn, mate, the change in the system would be amazing. Even, 50% of prisoners in Australia are supposed to be neurodiverse. If only we could give them an education. Imagine what they would do to society. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox now.
You can be on a soapbox. Hey, Dave Brebner is our guest. We're going to continue our conversation in just a short while. Dave has Tourette's syndrome. He's had several great mentors through his life who he says put God into his life. These days, from doing menial tasks as a youngster and people having no hope that he was going to achieve things, he has now 2 master's degrees, currently studying a PhD in educational neuroscience. And he tells his story in a new book called Living Beyond Limits, My Struggle and Triumph Over Tourette's Syndrome. You can get a hold of that on Amazon, any online booksellers. And you can connect with Dave on LinkedIn. But we're coming back to continue our conversation in just a short while. Well, a very interesting and significant conversation that we are into right now. Our special guest is Dave Brebner. Now, Dave had several special mentors as he was suffering Tourette's syndrome and all sorts of uncontrollable things happening with his body and attracting the attention of those who would make of him a mockery in his school years. But he counts God in his life, and those mentors made a huge difference to his faith and his understanding of God having a special purpose for him. These days, he's studying a PhD in educational neuroscience. Dave, let me ask you, because when you were young, people thought the extent of your capacity was that you would pack rubber bands into boxes, and they thought that's all you would do. When people tell you that's all you can do, how do you break out of that mould?
Well, I think, look, it's small steps, and I think I actually graduated from packing rubber bands to packing crayons, so I was promoted. but look, I think look, God's got a plan for you, and people mean well, and I think a lot of health people sometimes underestimate because under promise over perform sort of thing. and they give you the lowest common denominator of what could have happened. I remember my brother telling me later on that my mum and dad saw this professor, and he sort of shrugged his shoulders and said, "We don't know what's wrong with him. Take him home, look after him. He'll never really do anything with his life." And Mum was very angry, because I think Mum and Dad were very angry because they're people of faith, and they just got on with sort of saints of the mundane. They just sort of got on with things and kept pushing and kept encouraging me. And another mentor turned up in my life when I was young, and he said, I can't remember who it was, but he said to me, "In architecture, Dave, if you can't hide something, you make a feature of it." And it struck me that, so I've made a feature of it in my life. Despite the bullying and everything, I had a lot of low self-confidence when I was in the disabled place. And these two men particularly just drew something out of me that they just knew how to deal with me. And I think, and then there's some people, some really good Christian men around me who were just encouraging me and praying for me and talking to me all the time. And I think the youth group and the adults that sort of loved me into life. I really believe that sometimes people run into the body of Christ before they run into Christ himself. And I really believe that they made a tremendous difference and gave me confidence. I tried things out, and I succeeded. And I think, you get some wins on the board, and you like the idea, and you try to get small wins on the board. And I think I was my own worst enemy. I think I'd been talked into believing I was a dummy.
And you came to a point where you cried out to God, asking,
Yes.
"What's happening to me?" And, I can feel that passion even as I read those words from your book, "God, what's happening to me?" And did you get a response from him? Is there some way that you can say that in crying out with a prayer of faith and asking a question that God actually comes through, and you can identify that he actually did come through for you and set you on this path?
Yes, absolutely. I think it was to the point where I was unemployed. I was going to the disabled place. I'd fallen out of school and just basically given up on my education. And I was saying, "God, what's going on?" And I didn't really have it. I had a very limited understanding of the Bible or God or whatever, but I'd always cried out to him, especially when I was very young. I had very severe asthma. I remember praying all the time and asking for help. And I think history turns on a dime sometimes, Neil. I mean, sometimes you make small decisions, like going to that youth group that night, and it changes your life forever. And I think that's how he answered. I think Mum and Dad said to my older brother Michael, take David to this youth group tonight. So I went to this youth group with him, and I think, I don't know, I just came home. It was just sort of like arriving home. And it was just like, and this youth group just loved me and ignored my texts and everything and just loved me into life. And I think that was the answer to prayer. And I think that, they were just a great bunch of young people. And it was a bit of a revival at the time. And it was just profoundly touched me. Can't say exactly. And a lot of my problems fell away. Like God didn't heal me of Tourette's or OCD or anxiety or ADHD or anything like that. But some of my anxiety, the biggest thing for me was God took my fear away. So I could put myself in the palm of his hand and just believe that he's got me. And because I made him Lord, he takes that seriously. That's what I know.
In the school ground, the kids made a mockery of you.
Oh.
There's no guarantee that everybody in the youth group is going to be absolutely nice to you, but you must have found some special friends in that youth group that made you feel welcome and embraced in some way, and away from the sort of mockery that you were facing in the schoolyard. Is that a way? So. But you know what? It's not going to be the same in every youth group, but you've got to find the right friends in the right youth group, I imagine.
Well, yes, I think these were young people that were really committed to Christ, and they really had encounters themselves. And there was a girl called Jackie who was a nurse, and she was just a very good friend, like a big sister. And I rode around on the back of a motorcycle with her, and she just and this is the other thing, because when you grow up with Tourette's, and you're worried about having relationships, you don't know whether everyone's going to love you, you're either going to get married or something like this. And Jackie and her cousin just accepted me and loved me and just hung out with me, and I felt special, and I felt it gave me tremendous confidence with females. It gave me tremendous confidence. Look, I think everyone in there, there was no bad eggs in that youth group. They were all great kids, and it was it was drawing quite strongly because they were singing all the new songs. And of course, if you grew up Catholic, you were singing the songs from the 70s, and then these kids were all into the new. It was what was it? Songs of praise and all the scripture song and all that stuff back then, and that was new to our ears, and it was a really happening thing, and I think it was quite a attractive group, and I just got caught up in it, and I remember giving my life to God at the chapel one night and saying, well, and I really felt him say that, you give me your life and I'll give you mine.
Did you eventually find a girlfriend and a wife?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, that's the funny thing, because, you see, I was hopeless at relationships because I was needy. I was one of those kids that even though I'd grown a lot, I worked with Youth for Christ in New Zealand. I'd done all these things, done my own school apprenticeship, but I was really bad at relationships. I really, not needy, well, not exactly needy, but I was quite popular by then with my music and the bands and the music I was playing and stuff, but I think I just didn't know how to do a proper relationship. And then when I came to Sydney, I came and joined an ecumenical community over here, and they're wonderful people. I'm still in there after 30 years. And I met this girl, and I thought, oh, wow, she's amazing. God, I thought, here we go again. I'm going to screw this up. And deep in my mind, a voice said, right. You're right, you're not ready. So you are to pray for her, not go near her, and pray for her for 2 months that she will find the right husband. She will be blessed with the right husband. And you're not to go near her, you're not to try and make, not to, put any feet forward or anything. You're just supposed to sit there, and because it's that way, if it's not you, you're blessing her and you're blessing her husband to be. And it's just pain, because I'm in a flat of guys, and one of my flatmates starts going out with her and telling me about his dates with her and stuff, and I'm going, I died 1,000 deaths,
Yeah.
But God brought it to me. 2 months later, we went on a date. My first date, when I was able to take her out, it was like we were friends for all our life. It was just magic. It was just wonderful, and God said to me, because I gave it to you. You didn't try to take this time.
And when you're going through the uncontrollable movements and the tics, and I'm not sure how this affected you, but a lot of people with Tourette's, they often have, expletives, bad language coming out of their mouths too, and just uncontrollable. And it can be, for some, no doubt, something that pushes you away. It's a repulsive thing, but you found a wife who's able to deal with all of those sorts of things. And no doubt, what difference does it make when you have a wife to actually getting on top of all of those social behaviours?
Well, I think it's a multifaceted answer to that question, Neil. I think we've been married 33 years now, and there's times when it drives her nuts, and there's times when she's an incredibly lovely lady. She's going to go straight to heaven when she dies. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes. We're Catholics, so when she goes to confession, they say, "Oh, you're Dave Brebner's wife. You're absolved."
Yeah.
No problem. You've done enough. You're there. Look, I mean, even in our wedding video, I was shaking and twitching and carrying on, and people just. They're just used to me, and I think you're almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, Neil, in some ways. If it's not a problem to you, it's not a problem to many other people. I think we just kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. And with Rhonda, she's had to live with my jumpiness and my obsessions and all my carry on and my going down rabbit holes, even financially. She's the steady one. She just sits back there and waits for me to come out of it again and realise it was a bad idea. but, I mean, there's a lot to that. I think my kids have grown up with me doing things. Unfortunately, I haven't got the swearing much anymore. I do use bad language when I'm stressed or when I trip over or stub my toe or something, or I have a sudden shock, something that suddenly shocks me, and things come out of my mouth. But I think it's people just love me, and I've just learned to love myself a bit more, and hey, it's funny, you go to some churches, you shake and twitch and carry on, and imagine what they think you're dealing with. Deliverance time.
Yeah. I mean, have you had that? You've had people gathering around you and saying, hey, we've got to pray for this man. He needs deliverance.
Oh, yeah, we went through all that. So the charismatic section of things. And people mean well, and, it's just that there's, I mean, I even joke about it, I tell jokes about it, and just because I'm not putting people down, but people have got to realise that Christians don't have the answers to everything, and some things are neurological, and they're not sinful, or it's no different than having a broken leg, really. And people have got to realise that we're in an imperfect world, and some things happen to our brains when they're developing in the womb or whatever. They don't quite know what a lot of this is caused by. They say I've got too much dopamine, and my friend, who's a youth pastor of the Anglican Evangelical Church, we quite often come up beside each other because he's got Parkinson's. So we put our heads together and bang them to try and get my dopamine to go through to him because he's Parkinson's is not enough dopamine. I've got far too much. So we just follow it. Look, I think you just got to be a character, and I think I've had people who I know have got Tourette's and they're complete recluses because they're terrified of the world. I think you've got to make a feature of it, like I said, and I think you've got to step out and believe who you are, believe you're sent by God to do something, and we're going to do it. And at the end of the day, there's a lot worse things than Tourette's.
Dave, in your book, Living Beyond Limits, it's not just a book about Tourette's syndrome, is it? It's a testimony. It's your testament to how you overcome those things that would hold ordinary people back. And
yes.
You've shown that you've got an unbreakable human spirit. You've gone on and you're studying and you're got those master's degrees and you're now a candidate for a PhD. I mean, there's a testimony in there. What do you encourage for parents who are wondering about their own children, and there might be all sorts of neurodiverse conditions that children face these days? Encouragement from you for parents on how they look to navigate the way forward for their child.
Well, first of all, I would say, and down here in New South Wales, we have this thing called the high school certificate. And every kid's got to have it. It's like it's some sort of educational guide. Most people with neurodiversity do hopelessly at school, and then they do brilliantly as entrepreneurs and stuff later. There's many people have great lives later, entrepreneurs and comics and actors and famous people who have Tourette's and OCD and ADHD. And the thing is not to worry about education too much. Worry about growing character. Isn't it strange, Neil, that we're in a time now where it's the first time in history we've ever had to try and teach resilience to young people. Yep. We've got it. Life is tough sometimes, but it makes you stronger. And I think look. My parents held me accountable for what I was accountable for. What I was able to do, they held me accountable for. What I wasn't able to do, they helped me. And I think we've got to, we don't worry about education too much. Some kids will not do well at school. They will not do well in education. And when the frontal lobe kicks in with what they call myelination and they start to wake up at about 25 and realise they want to do something with their lives, they make fantastic tradespeople, fantastic academics, fantastic whatever. So don't worry. My first thing would say, don't worry about school. Just do it. Keep them there. Keep them alive till they get there. But the thing till they get through. But the thing is, look, if we spend more time on character and relationship with God and things like that, and building them up, and as I say to educators often, Neil, if all you get for that kid sitting in that seat in the classroom, you get nothing out of them, but all you give them is a love for learning, you set them up later in life.
Wonderful insights, Dave, and wonderful takeaways from a conversation like this for parents who are wondering what to do with their own children and having some levels of neurodiversity that they can identify, and wonderful wisdom in getting into a church youth group where you can find some faithful friends who won't put you down and who will be your friends through thick and thin, and recognising too beautiful wisdom that you were given. In architecture, if you can't hide something, you make a feature of it. And you talk about these things in your book, and I know that there'll be listeners who might want to get a hold of this, either because they're facing these things within their own family, or they know that there's somebody within their local church or in their community who could do with a book which will be encouraging like yours. The book is called Living Beyond Limits: My Struggle and Triumph Over Tourette's Syndrome. It's available now on Amazon. And Dave Brebner is also a speaker. He's a keynote speaker. He's available for presentations, and you should check him out if you'd like a speaker for a group that you might be leading or a gathering that you do regularly. You can get in touch with Dave, especially on LinkedIn. Best way to connect with Dave on LinkedIn, Dave Brebner, Brebner, and get a hold of that book, Living Beyond Limits. Dave, thanks so much for taking some time to share your heart with listeners today on 2020.
Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for the blessing, mate. Take care.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.